Norbert Wiener stands as one of the pivotal thinkers of the 20th century, a mathematician whose curiosity and empathy combine to create an intellectual movement that still shapes contemporary discussions of computing, control systems, artificial intelligence, and the social responsibilities that accompany technological power. His life narrative is itself a study in feedback loops between personal genius and historical circumstance, beginning with a precocious childhood in the United States, traversing the most fertile mathematical circles of Europe, and culminating in a long career at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he forged the discipline that he named cybernetics. To trace the arc of his contributions is to explore themes that stretch from Fourier analysis and Brownian motion to robotics, prosthetics, and the moral philosophy of automation. It is also to encounter a personality whose deep concern for human welfare was inseparable from his technical insights, yielding a body of work that remains remarkably contemporary in a world increasingly guided by algorithms. His early years reveal both the advantages and pressures of extraordinary intellectual promise. Born in Columbia, Missouri in 1894, Wiener was the eldest child of Leo Wiener, a polyglot scholar who had emigrated from Eastern Europe and become a professor of Slavic languages at Harvard University. Leo treated education not merely as cultivation, but as mission, exposing his son to advanced mathematics and classical literature at an age when most children are just mastering multiplication. The household environment was intense and occasionally austere, driven by the conviction that intellect carries civic responsibility. Norbert enrolled at Tufts College when he was only 11, earned a degree in mathematics at 14, and proceeded directly to graduate study at Harvard. By 18, he had completed a doctoral dissertation on mathematical logic under the supervision of Carl Schmitt, examining the foundations laid by Whitehead and Russell. A postdoctoral pilgrimage to Europe followed, putting him in contact with G.H. Hardy and Bertrand Russell in Cambridge, then David Hilbert and Edmund Landau in Göttingen. Those encounters sharpened his appreciation for rigorous formalism, while also broadening his sense of the many ways in which mathematics could interact with physical reality. When Wiener returned to the United States in the late 1910s, he found a rapidly industrializing nation entering the First World War. He took various short appointments, including a stint computing artillery tables for the United States Army, before securing a faculty position at MIT in 1919. The institute was then transforming from a technical college into a research powerhouse, and Wiener thrived in its applied atmosphere. His early publications explored Fourier integrals, generalized harmonic analysis, and differential equations. These papers were notable for their elegance, but also for the way they quietly linked pure theory to questions of vibration, signaling, and what he called noise. One of his lasting achievements from this era was the rigorous definition of the stochastic path, now known as the Wiener process, the mathematical model underlying standard Brownian motion. That breakthrough provided physicists and economists with a quantitative framework for randomness and laid an essential plank for modern probability theory. It was, however, the Second World War that catalyzed the work for which Wiener is best remembered. Radar had emerged as a decisive technology, yet early systems struggled to direct anti-aircraft fire accurately enough to strike fast-moving planes. The engineering challenge was fundamentally one of prediction under uncertainty. Working with the mathematician Julian Bigelow and the engineer Arturo Rosenbluth, Wiener developed a set of algorithms that treated pursuing guns and escaping aircraft as components in an interactive loop. In that loop, the future state of the target was inferred from present measurements. Corrections were made in near real time, and the cycle repeated continuously. To describe this recursive architecture, Wiener resurrected an old Greek word for steersman and christened his new science cybernetics, defining it as the study of control and communication in the animal and the machine. The publication of Cybernetics in 1948 marked a watershed. The text circulated across disciplinary boundaries with unusual speed, attracting physiologists, electrical engineers, sociologists, and even artists. Wiener advanced the claim that feedback was a unifying principle able to explain the thermoregulation of the human body, the guidance of a missile, and the structure of a democratic society. He framed information not merely as a technical measure, but as a pattern capable of persisting through transformations of medium, much as a melody remains recognizable whether played on a piano or sung by a choir. In doing so, he anticipated the information age conception of digital abstraction that now underlies everything from streaming music to genomic sequencing. Yet he also warned of possible downsides. In the closing chapters, he reflected on the acceleration of automation and its potential to displace human labor, urging readers to consider the ethical implications before technological momentum rendered thoughtful choice impossible. Those themes returned with greater urgency in his later book, The Human Use of Human Beings. Here Wiener argued that any progressive society must align technological development with humanitarian values or risk turning citizens into passive components of an impersonal machine. He opposed uncritical military funding of research and famously refused lucrative Pentagon contracts, distinguishing himself from many colleagues who regarded defense sponsorship as an unquestioned good. His letters to fellow scientists often implored them to examine the ends, not just the means, of their investigations, foreshadowing current debates on dual-use artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons. Wiener's stance cost him access to certain projects, yet it also cemented his status as a moral voice within the profession. While cybernetics commanded public attention, Wiener continued to make technical advances. His work on time series prediction led to what engineers now call the Wiener filter, a mathematical technique for extracting true signals from noisy measurements. This filter became foundational in telecommunications, seismology, medical imaging, and control theory. At a conceptual level, his exploration of optimum prediction introduced ideas that later converged with the Kalman filter and modern Bayesian inference. In each case, the essential insight was that past data could be weighted in such a way as to deliver the best possible estimate of an unobserved present or imminent future, balancing fidelity against computational feasibility. His influence reached biology through the notion of homeostasis, which cyberneticians linked to feedback loops of hormones, neural firing, and cellular regulation. Behavioral scientists exploited cybernetic metaphors to model learning and adaptation, while economists borrowed the language of control to analyze markets. Even the fledgling field of computer science felt his impact. Early discussions of automated information retrieval, neural networks, and self-modifying programs all leaned on Wiener's vision of machine intelligence rooted in statistical pattern recognition rather than rote calculation alone. Yet Wiener was no technological determinist. He regarded the machine as an extension of human purpose, analogous to the way language extends thought. Accordingly, he championed prosthetics and sensory augmentation for people with disabilities, predicting that electronic hearing aids and synthetic vision could one day restore functions once thought lost forever. These ideas found partial realization decades later in cochlear implants and retinal prostheses, testaments to his intuitive grasp of cybernetics as a bridge, not a barrier, between human and machine. Personal anecdotes from his MIT tenure paint a portrait of eccentric genius. He was known to compose proofs on scraps of paper while wandering corridors, sometimes oblivious to his surroundings, occasionally exiting a classroom mid-sentence only to return moments later with a notebook filled with new derivations. Students recall that he could be both absent-minded and intensely compassionate, recalling details of their families, but forgetting where he had placed his own lecture notes. His lectures were dense and rapid, yet his office door remained open to those willing to wrestle with the mathematics. Many of his doctoral students went on to shape the early digital computer industry, bringing cybernetic thinking into hardware design and programming languages. In the broader intellectual climate of the 1950s and early 1960s, cybernetics enjoyed a vogue that intertwined with the emerging discipline of information theory championed by Claude Shannon. While the two men respected each other's work, their emphases differed. Shannon pursued the capacity limits of communication channels, presenting a world in which bits could be counted like beads on an abacus. Wiener pursued the semantics of signals, emphasizing meaning, purpose, and the role of feedback in maintaining organization. Later generations of researchers would seek synthesis, merging Shannon's quantitative rigor with Wiener's systems perspective to build cognitive architectures and adaptive control systems. Wiener's final years were marked by both recognition and restlessness. He traveled extensively, lecturing in Europe, India, and Latin America, advocating for scientific exchange free from Cold War rivalries. He accepted the National Medal of Science in 1963, 1 year before his death in Stockholm while attending a conference. Even as his health waned, he remained preoccupied with questions about the ethical boundaries of machine decision-making. Draft manuscripts discovered posthumously reveal his fascination with biological growth models and the mathematics of self-organizing systems, topics that would later flourish under the banner of complexity science. The legacy of Norbert Wiener is visible in multiple institutional forms. The IEEE bestows an annual award in his name for contributions to the social implications of technology. Research centers dedicated to cybernetics continue to explore applications that range from autonomous drones to ecological modeling. More subtly, his ideas pervade everyday life. When an adaptive cruise control system modulates a car's speed, when a spam filter separates legitimate messages from junk, when a thermostat learns occupancy patterns to conserve energy, the principles he articulated are at work. Even discussions about algorithmic bias echo his insistence that designers must interrogate not only how systems function, but also whom they serve. Perhaps the most enduring element of Wiener's thought is its refusal to separate technical mastery from moral responsibility. He believed that knowledge is never value neutral, that every equation and every circuit enters a social context where it acquires consequences, some intended, others unforeseen. In that belief, he stands as a progenitor of contemporary movements advocating responsible innovation, interpretability of machine learning, and inclusive technology governance. He also offers a reminder that visionary science can emerge from empathy as well as intellect. His reflections on labor displacement, economic inequality, and the psychological toll of mechanization remain pertinent as automation enters fields he could scarcely have imagined, from creative writing to genomic editing. The narrative of Norbert Wiener, therefore, spans more than the achievements of a singular mathematician. It chronicles the birth of a worldview that treats information, feedback, and control as fundamental categories bridging the living and the mechanical. It illuminates how pure curiosity about the distribution of prime numbers or the vibration of a string can ripple outward to influence radar tracking, digital communication, and ethical philosophy. It shows that rigorous abstraction need not be divorced from humanistic concern, and that indeed the most transformative ideas may arise when these domains converge. In an era captivated by rapid advances in artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, and networked autonomy, returning to Wiener's writings offers both conceptual tools and moral guidance. He invites us to ask not only what machines can do, but also what they ought to do, and for whose benefit. That question, posed more than half a century ago, resonates with undiminished urgency today and secures Norbert Wiener's place among the essential thinkers of the modern age.